But I want to ask you, and you write this in your prologue, and you say that your book was declined bookshelf space in several, several of these stores, bookstores, where they would carry virtually every other book with great pride by Indian authors. The contested legacy of Savarkar hasn't even found too many people as takers in the so-called intelligentsia of today in terms of a review of the book, and these are the self-professed freedom of speech torch bearers. How do you see this? I mean, is this completely a fake view of what freedom of speech is all about? Your freedom is contested to decipher what Savarkar was all about. They won't even acknowledge it in a bookstore or through a review, yet they are the champions of freedom of speech.
Very true, Navika. I think you hit the nail on the head, where the same custodians of freedom of speech, the so-called liberals, who also dominate to a large extent, academia, the media, and cultural bodies. They've almost been gatekeepers where any opposing viewpoint is never allowed to thrive. Particularly in my discipline of history, where world over, where a conservative view is not given as much of an importance. And in India particularly, it's been the Marxist historiography that has ruled the roost since independence. There's a very narrow narrative that needs to be pushed when it comes to the history of India. And particularly, about the freedom movement, there has to be a very monochromatic, linear, a very simplistic kind of a narrative, like almost playing out like an Attenborough film, where the non-violent movement, for all its importance, and I'm not disparaging that at all, becomes the mainstream, and anybody else is a fringe. So in that paradigm, Savarkar also becomes an outsider, so to say. But in his case, there's a double whammy for him. He was the father of Hindutva. He was also someone who was implicated in Mahatma Gandhi's assassination and later acquitted. And so in the years after independence, he was almost a persona non grata. Anybody who even spoke about him or had associations with him, there was a cancel culture against them. Someone of the stature of Mr. Hridaynath Mangeshkar in the 50s and 60s, just because he was close to the Savarkar family and used to tune many of Savarkar's Marathi poems. He was a great poet, and so many of his poems which he tuned, and the Mangeshkar sisters, including Lataji, had sung these. Hridaynath Mangeshkar actually lost his job in the All India Radio, and he's on record stating this. So this was the kind of intolerance that one had for Savarkar in particular. And so that's one reason why in the 50 years since the last biography of Savarkar was written in the 1960s, there's been no scholarly attempt made to reevaluate him, revisit his life, and also see his relevance in contemporary politics. And that says a lot about Indian scholarship and about all these torchbearers of freedom of speech and expression. In my case too, as you pointed out, the book did well only thanks to this social media and word of mouth. Many booksellers, since I've been a writer for a decade and more, many of them said, we have nothing against the writer, but we would not want to keep this book in our bookstore. So, and many media outlets not reviewing it. But despite that, it went on to become a national bestseller. And I think that says a lot about how these organizations and individuals are increasingly irrelevant in New India, where I think an idea can reach out to the masses without all these via medias that one needs to employ.